We're ready to roll.
Okay.
Hey, man, Mark, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yes, sir. So before we get into your work, especially in the realm of healthcare, you know, we have a new year here. 4.5, 5 years ago, we were dealing with one of the very first pandemics anybody has dealt with in a long, long time. How did surviving that time period affect your business model and the way you live today?
Well, to be honest, I've been studying these frequencies and stuff for 26 years, and I had like a predecessor to this product that I was, doing clinical trials and stuff with. We really didn't ramp up on the new product, the Vibe, until beginning of 2023. So it's kind of that part was kind of over for most part COVID when I really started to ramp up. So we've been actually ramp up selling these devices really for 2 years. And
Yes.
so the good news is there's good news and bad news to it. We can talk about it, but we're probably the fastest growing PEMF company in the world.
Yeah.
We're growing 500% year over year. So
Wow. So before we delve into the Vibe, I want to know this. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids at career day and one of the kids was curious about what you do on a daily basis, how would you answer them?
sunshine puts energy in your body, right? So you need sunshine. This is a futuristic way to put energy into your body, just like going out in the sun.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your vision for your life?
I think in my third grade, I probably wanted to be a race car driver,
Okay.
petty and that type of things. And I hate cars now. So that my path didn't go anywhere when I wanted to be as a kid. My undergraduate was chemical engineering. In fact, in high school, it was like I loved chemistry, and I told my chemistry teacher, "Hey, I want to be a chemist." He goes, "No, you don't. You're gonna end up being a school teacher like me. Go be a go be a chemical engineer." I go, "What the hell is that?" He goes, "They make more money." I'm like, "All right." So I don't know what that was, and I checked that block on the application form, and so I thought I would work in like Dow Chemical or DuPont or all that stuff. And I live here in Cocoa Beach near Cape Canaveral. My dad was in rockets. I didn't like rock. I mean, rockets were okay, but I didn't want to do what my dad was doing. But me in 1983, when I graduated with a chemical engineering degree, and my best friend was a nuclear physicist, we're both hanging drywall for $3.50 an hour. And we're
Yeah.
like, this sucks because
Yeah.
nobody was hiring anybody. And somebody goes, "Hey, this Morton Thiokol just got this shuttle processing contract at the vertical assembly building. Put your resume in for them." I'm like, "Okay." And then they hired me instantly. And I'm like, "Well, I'll do this for 6 months till I find a real job." And then 17 years later, I was still on the space program.
So talk to me about take me back to where you were born and raised. What were the foundational seeds that were planted into you that has been cultivated into this career and this groundbreaking device?
It's going to be a weird answer. So there's 4 kids in my family. We're all adopted from different families and stuff. And I grew up in a town where I think I'm the only person that didn't smoke pot and do drugs. And I'm like, I don't want, I need to go to college, do something different because most of my high school, they weren't going to go to college, a lot of them anyway. And I was actually on a rifle. I was a very good marksman. So I had an NCAA scholarship potential. I went to multiple colleges. I went to West Virginia. This is back in the day when they could give a kid a credit card to run around and spend money and see if he liked the college, right? And I'm like, went to West Virginia and I looked at it and I go, I'll never graduate from here because this is a party school.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Tennessee Tech, which is a nerdy engineering school, just because I knew I wouldn't graduate from anywhere else. So no, I didn't have, I mean, my dad kind of went, "I can't afford for you to go to college. So you need to quit chasing girls, get off your butt and get your grades up because NCAA is going to give you a scholarship if you don't screw it up." So that was kind of the motivation.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, this town back then was a lot of people doing. I'm the only one that didn't do smoke pot and do quaaludes, I think.
Right. Right. Well, talk to me about the Vibe device. How take me from the beginnings, the idea that you had to actual fruition. How did this happen?
Now, this happened about 26, 7 years ago. That thing couldn't come upstairs, my
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
So she just started crying, and she'd never done that before. She couldn't come up the stairs in Utah from downstairs. So me and my wife flipped a coin to see who's not going to work that day. And it was me. So they
Yeah.
took her to the vet and they x-rayed her and said she had severe arthritis in her spine. And a friend of mine, he's a very forward-thinking veterinarian. His name's Dr. Oz Jackson. And he goes, hey, there's this lady that has this magic machine that can reverse arthritis. I'm like, okay. So I tried to set up a appointment with her. She's 2 to 3 states away, and my dog got sick really fast, so I didn't get a chance to do that. But that sparked the interest of, hey, first of all, I'm a rocket scientist, right? So like this frequency stuff is BS. It can't actually work. So I started digging into it, and you're like, there's a lot of data out there. There's actually 35,000 published papers on it. It's been around for a long time. NASA used it in the 1970s and 80s. And I'm like, and magnetic therapy has been around since 3500 BC. So the more I dug into it, the initial spark beyond that was I saw what it could do for PTSD and trauma.
Yeah.
And it's super successful, but it's being held hostage in a clinical environment with doctors and with expensive machines. So I'm like, there's got to be a way to make a simple, affordable device. Naively, I dove into that thinking this would be easy. I'll take a little printed circuit board and catch on fire, and there's a pile of coils over here, and none of it worked. And so that's what my main motivation was, to initially PTSD and trauma, going after soldiers to start with. But since then, that's half of the rest of them are civilians, women that have crappy husbands, boyfriends, miscarriages, life, right? So there's trauma everywhere. The number one cause of trauma in the US is car wrecks, and 45,000, right? So that's what really got me motivated was the PTSD, the PTSD trauma piece of it. But we have like 59 different protocols on there: anxiety, back pain, sleep, blood sugar, because I can't say the D word because the FDA is coming after me, right? So we have a lot of success with a lot of different protocols, but that was the initial one, was PTSD. The 44 suicides a day pissed me off.
Yeah.
Right. We got 22 military guys, 15 first responders, 5 medical workers, 2 active duty. That's not counting all the civilians I just talked about.
Yeah.
So we have, I believe, the largest clinical trial with PTSD and PEMF, and we have a 98% success rate. I don't even believe that number, but it's real. The data's there. That's super. Anyway, I went on with a really long answer, but it's pretty emotional because we get hundreds of emails a day, phone calls. People have guns in their mouth, and now they don't have that anymore.
Wow.
They're going to get divorced. Now they're not getting divorced. The kids don't want to hang out with them. Now the kids want to hang out with them. That kind of thing. Yeah, it's pretty emotional.
It's amazing. I'll hear about these products and these ideas sometimes, and I'm like, why don't everybody know about this? I mean, you have this Pandora's box of this very clinically proven device that's saving lives. Why isn't more mass spread? I mean, what is it that holds these back from being on a news segment so people can get it and can save their lives?
For the most part, so everyone that's listening, including you, will get this right away when I say it. The most expensive news time or commercial time is what? The 6 o'clock news. Every single commercial is a drug commercial, bar none. All of them. 75% of the FDA's research budget is funded by the drug companies. So Pfizer and Merck. So there is getting noise out there. More and more people are learning about it, but the FDA does not want this technology to exist. They're not looking out for US citizens. They're just not. Okay. And the drug companies don't want, this is not a recurring revenue item for a drug company. It's not, consumable, right? So that's really the answer. There is, because we all have things like this and podcasts and internet and stuff, more and more people are learning about it. If you go man on the street with a microphone, just go, hey, you ever heard of PMF? 1 out of 20 people is going to say yes, because they know about a beamer mat or something that their chiropractor, acupuncturist, or a spa. However, you go ask a horse owner, every one of them has heard of it. All of them. Yeah. Because they all know what MagnaWave is, and they know their vet comes out with a big ring and a $20,000 machine, and they treat their horses. Yeah. Right. So that is a market we're going after that's hugely successful. Right. So it depends which area you're in, but doctors aren't trained on this stuff. They're not trained on nutrition. They're trained on what they're trained on. And how do they learn about new stuff when a drug company sales guy comes and tells them, here's some free samples? Yeah. I mean, that's a long answer, but it's just like, what is really cool Um, hopefully it's coming out here this month. Is I didn't even know this. I got approached by the producer for public service announcements, that he told me, educated me, that the TV networks have to do so much public service stuff that's free, blah blah
Uh,
blah. So we have Samuel L. Jackson's doing the narration. He already did it. That's talking about this specific product, and hopefully
wow.
that's going to be on TV. So we are going to get some of that news out. Podcasts like this,
Yeah,
like I said, the only reason we're growing 500% a year is this type of stuff.
absolutely. Who's been a hero for you? Who's been that inspiration for you to develop Vibe and to just be who you are?
I don't know if it's not to develop the vibe, but the guy's name's Roy Williams. He's the highest paid ad writer in the world. So I'm an engineer, but I teach marketing and I'm more interested in marketing than I am engineering stuff. I'm bored with the engineering project stuff. So he is the most influential guy I've ever met. And he's not an engineer and doesn't have a college degree, but he makes you think completely different about business and marketing. When I first met him 25 years, so we have a thing called the Wizard Academy. It's a nonprofit. Sounds weird. It's in Austin, Texas. It's a nonprofit. It's been built on nothing but donations. It is the coolest place in the world to learn how to learn cool stuff fast. So we have 2 to 3 day classes about communications and marketing, what works, what doesn't, and it's completely different than anything anyone's been taught in marketing school. Your marketing degree, you're going to throw it away if you went there. You just get rid of it and start over. So it's, for example, he told me like 25 years ago, I go, how did you get into this? He's like, Mark, here's what I'd like to do all day: read poetry and write poetry, but nobody will pay you for that.
Yeah.
So what I figured out is poetry is the only language that is persuasive. So that's how I took what I like about poetry and put it into ad writing.
Wow.
So yeah, he's, again, it's not, I didn't really, rocket scientists and stuff, they're not that smart. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not hard to get promoted in aerospace because everyone's afraid of making a decision. So if you just make decisions, you get promoted fast. It's
Yeah.
like, so the technical part of it, I didn't really have any good inspirations. Maybe Carver Kennedy and a few guys that I worked with that were more of an inspiration from the angle of, you know what you're doing, just keep going. I mean, I had your annual review with my boss one time. I walk in, we hadn't seen each other in a year. I walk in, he goes, don't know what you've been doing for last year, but NASA says you're kicking ass. So keep doing whatever you're doing. Here's your raise. See you later. See you next year. Right. So that was a good inspiration. He didn't give me a big lecture on how to go do stuff different. He didn't know what I did. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't know what you do. I'll go work on other problems. You're not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, being an entrepreneur and developing the Vibe, it all takes risk. What's the biggest risk that you've ever taken in your life?
The biggest risk I've ever taken in my life, because I built an airplane, I fly hot air balloons, but I'll tell you, relative to the Vibe, not share this with anyone. 4 days before I had spent all the money on mold tooling to launch this product, 4 days, our financial advisor embezzled us, took half my retirement, committed suicide. So to answer your question about risk, me and my wife are sitting there going, what the fuck? Do I spend all this money on this device? Do I just go back to aerospace and get a real job till I can retire? What the hell do I do? And her answer was, after about 2 weeks, was, you'll be impossible to live with after all the time you put into this crap if you don't give it a try. So just spend the money. And I took, literally, I lost half my retirement, and a big chunk of the half that was left we spent launching this.
Wow, that is an amazing story. It reminds me, I think about when FedEx started, the owner, I think, went to Vegas and had his last dime in his pocket and he gambled and it worked. It's those things that are the mark of a true entrepreneur. You just got to do the risk. You got to go for it. You got to believe in what you're doing.
Well, most everyone probably knows Elon's story with SpaceX. He
Yeah.
had budget for 4 rockets. They all blew up. He
Yeah.
comes into the meeting and is like, every person in the team's like, he's firing us. And he goes, hey, the rockets didn't cost as much as I thought they would. So we got enough money for one more. And if you screw that up, then we're all out of business. That dude's launching them 3 times a week now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right here out my window. There'll
Yeah.
probably be one in the middle of this podcast. So he's lost his mind with mean, he's been super successful. He's going to have some failures because
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest risk was, what do I do now? You
Yeah.
know,
So, how do you balance this work life matrix for you? You have to develop as a human being. You're doing work that's impacting a lot of lives. You're putting a lot of yourself into it. What's the motivation for you to wake up, to make this balance, to be at the top of your game and develop as a human?
I'm not balanced from the standpoint of I'm neglecting my toys, my hot air balloon and my airplane. I'm not flying as much, and I'm playing golf once a year, maybe. So I'm neglecting that. But 9 months ago, where I was at was stuffing envelopes and answering emails and doing no strategic anything because I didn't have time to. I hired, quote, my first employee April 1st of last year. So it hadn't even been a year. My wife started shaking when I told her last night I have 12 people on the payroll now, right? In the last 9 months. So I'm scaling it up enough that I got time to do strategic stuff, do podcasts, do some other things. But the main motivation, and I tell everyone that I've hired that works on this team, is you're going to get tons of satisfaction. It's a good, but this is real. These are real people.
Yeah.
Some of them have been tortured. Some of them have been through all kinds of trauma. They've been in pain for 30 years, right? They have side effects. So you're going to hear a lady called me this morning, right? Her device broke. She broke one, ran it over something. I sent her a replacement and she jumped in a hot tub by accident yesterday, ruined it. She's crying on the phone going, I'm a military vet and this has saved my life. And you know it has. What do I do? I can't afford another one. That's real stuff. So, I mean, it's to get up every morning with the PTSD and trauma and backing the actual people we're helping and the horses and the dogs and cats is super exciting. I can't say the D word, I already said, but for blood sugar, we're running a big study right now with, I already know it works. I just got to get a third party to do it with enough clinical data. But yeah, if we can take the D word, get A1Cs and blood sugars drop down for the third of the country that has the D, okay? Here's how it normally happens. Seriously, Joe, is the patient will go to the doctor and they'll go, hey, your A1C is down. This is the first time, and your blood sugar is good. Obviously, you're doing exercise and dieting. You finally did what I started to tell you to do. And you go, no, I've been using this. And they go, what the hell is that? And this is how I get most of my wholesalers. Their doctors call me up and go, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And I explain it to them. Then they start buying 10 packs, right?
Yeah.
Had a lady day before yesterday, her daughter said, my 89-year-old mother has been on a walker for a decade and canes and stuff. She got rid of her walker. She doesn't want it anymore. And she walked into the doctor's office without her cane. And the doctor went, where the hell is your cane at? She goes, I don't need it. So she's running the arthritis and inflammation protocol. I have stories and stories and stories and stories and stories like that. And I'll just leave you one last one here, because if this doesn't raise the hair on your arm, you're not human. Okay. 17-year-old girl said, Mark, I'll never have a date in my life because I have Tourette's. I'm a monster. The boys at school pick on me all the time. It's awful. I ran the brain balancing protocol. My Tourette's disappeared, and I have a date Saturday night. She got engaged to the guy and then married him.
Wow.
I have hundreds of stories like that. So that's a long answer to your question. Here it is in perspective, because my friends are going, are you nuts? I'm 63. They go, what are you doing? I'm like, because I'm not making any money. None.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the cash flow that we had, in fact, I had this conversation with my VP of ops yesterday. She goes, you got to be making money. Nope. Here's how much we made last year. And I spent every penny of it on Monday to buy more inventory.
Wow.
I've never paid myself a commission or salary. I don't expense anything that's personal. So it's a weird reality. It's like, if the FDA puts me out of business tomorrow, I will have not made any money or paid my wife back for the money we had to borrow out of our retirement to make it exist, right? But that's super cool to see horses and get videos of the lady's like, oh my God, I haven't been able to ride this horse. But think about horse owners.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of that horse after it gets arthritis. You got him for another 25 years. You got to stall him. So one lady told me, if you can allow me to ride my horse an extra 2 years, you can charge whatever you want for this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's super long answer, but that's super satisfying yeah, I am making a difference. I mean, I here's what I dream of doing on go into Shark Tank? Because if I was on Shark Tank, I wouldn't be the fastest growing guys. But I'd love to go into Shark Tank and go, okay, first of all, Cuban, you're out. I don't want to hear anything from you because you hate wellness and all that stuff. Just shut up and don't ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I want to say, hey, I want a $0 investment for 10% of the company. Why would you do that, stupid? Because my runway is not long enough. And I don't have enough noise to get enough of this out fast enough.
Yeah.
Right. Is again, like the military and PTSD and the trauma and the amount of people it's helping. And it doesn't work for 100% people, but I won't give you exact numbers. It's way north of 90.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's always going to be those numbers that aren't going to work, but this almost seems like a miracle. Like everything that you're telling me, the success rate, everything that's going on. I mean, do you ever just kind of lean back and think, "Oh my God, I've created this miracle that's creating all of these waves." I mean, the amount of lives that you're changing right now is going to be generational. The things that are happening to all of these people that are getting their lives back is creating such an enormous tsunami, and you can't put a price tag on that.
You know what? So I wrote an article specifically for all my Facebook haters because I got so many of them, it's ridiculous. I wrote the article, Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. I said, okay, here's what we do know. Here's what we don't know. We don't know everything, but I list the things that we do know. Then I sum it up with, here's the top 100 scams of all time. Because I get called scam artist every day. I'm like, how am I scam artist when I have a 30-day money back guarantee? But anyway, so here's the top scams of all time. Ready? DNA sequencing, CRISPR, MRIs, antibiotics. Right? So I go through a list of 100 technologies that were absolutely impossible until they weren't.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about it that way, and magnetic therapy, has been around for 3,500 years.
Sure.
But if you just go look at that, and I try to explain to people how an MRI works, we do 1 million MRIs a year. No one questions the technology behind it, but it is 5 layers of magic that are absolutely impossible. They're absolutely, it won't take up too much time, but I could give you a 1-minute version of how it works, but it's like, it can't work. Yeah. It absolutely cannot work, but we use it every single day.
Uh-huh. Yeah. All over the place. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, Mark. Family, friends, everyone that's getting this product, all the lives you're changing, everybody that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I just, like my wife says, she goes, you need to take your friend Steve and just take half your ambition, give it to him so you can calm down a little bit. And he has some. Okay. So I'm just, and my friends go, you want to like live forever? I'm like, no, I want to stick around to see what happens next. I'm just curious. So most of the driving thing is like, I learn something new. Somebody tells me something. I go, that can't be right. And I go dive into it. I'll give a real quick example is because I feel good about this. I got to school at MIT. Professor has 2 PhDs and he's an MD. Okay. So they did a study where you flicker light at 40 hertz and it reverses Alzheimer's and plaque in the brain. I already knew that. I tried to school him on here's some other stuff, some other frequencies. But he goes, well, what's your frequencies? I go, 1 to 1,000 hertz is that range. He goes, yeah, but you can't see anything over 60 hertz. I'm like, right. But you didn't tape the rat's eyes open either. And he goes, right. I go, so how did they get the therapy? How did they get the energy when they weren't staring at the light? He goes, we've never figured that out. So I explained this to a very good friend of mine at the Wizard Academy. She's on the board of directors with me. Is Dr. Lori Barr. She's like one of the top pediatric radiologists in the country. And she goes, oh, I know the answer to that, Mark. They discovered in 2001 that your skin has light receptors like your eye.
Yeah.
So I went back to this MIT professor and I go, hey, you know how it's getting into your rat is it's going through the skin, not the eyes. He's like, that's impossible. That doesn't exist. So I gave him all this research. I said, go read all this stuff. And he came back on a Zoom call and goes, you can't shit me. Really? So I felt really good about teaching an MIT professor something that I didn't know. But I'm super interested in learning new things. I get bored if I don't. So this is fun. And to put it in perspective, my wife goes, go over there in the corner and figure out how many companies have you started in the last 10 years that didn't work? 12. I didn't know what it was. I had to go count them.
Yeah.
So part of the motivation is Mark Zuckerberg has all my money because the ads are ridiculously expensive. The ads cost way more than the product does. But I think I have enough margin unless that guy changes his algorithm again. But I think I have enough cash flow to keep growing this. So for the last 2 years, after all these failures, I mean, I've done stuff with music and art from DNA. I'm very interested in, I know enough about DNA to be dangerous.
Yeah.
So I know how to make music and art out of it and do interesting things and drug testing. But none of those had enough margin or enough time or money to show if they worked or not. And so I nicknamed my wife Lucy Van Pelt from the Peanuts because everything should cost a nickel, right? So every time I launch a company, it's like, you spent $100 and it didn't make any money yet. I'm like, well, okay. And then I end up killing it because it just didn't have any budget. But this product has enough margin to pay Zuckerberg, because it is the most expensive part of it is the ads. Anyway, it's cool that, and part of its ego is like, cool, maybe I'm finally winning for once,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Sure.
Maybe.
So let's keep getting the word out. If anyone wants to reach out, they have questions, they want to get the vibe, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to go?
They can go to Resona.health. It's short for resonance, RESONA.health. And I don't know if your readers will think this is funny, or thefdasucks.com. And they can get $150 off on that website.
Okay. I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. Mark, this is fascinating. Thank you so much. It's miraculous what you're doing. I mean, just
Thank you.
and it reminds me, did you ever watch that show Monk?
No, not really. No,
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, but no.
So anyway, this won't give anything away, but they made a movie and it was in pandemic times and he's a germ phobe. So he was in heaven. He was like, "Oh my God, there's sanitizer everywhere. I wear gloves and masks." And at one point, he's solving all these crimes and he starts getting down. He's like, I don't understand what I'm doing. I'm tired of doing this. All the victims that I'm trying to solve crimes for are gone. I don't know that I'm doing anything and making any impact." And I keep thinking about your story, about the fact that you get to see all of this. You literally get to see the fruition of all of this hard work. And it's so good to see that all these lives are absolutely changing. Because it's not just an ache and pain. You're talking about guns coming out of mouths, women getting married after something as serious as Tourette's. This is wonderful, groundbreaking work. So I am honored to shout this from the mountaintops. So thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for those comments. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck with everything. Send my love to Florida. I can use some of that sunshine today.
Okay. Thank you so much for having
Thank you,
me.
man.
Take
Take
care.
care.